executive editor of Black Agenda Report that was launched in 2006, along with Bruce Dixon and Margaret Kemperly. Ford's distinguished long career include correspondent with the Mutual Black Network, co-producer and host of America's Black Forum. Ford is producer and co-host of Black Agenda Radio and appears as a weekly commentary on The Real News. And along with Glen is my good friend, Daoud Andres, who is a Haitian activist, and he works with Kamakota. So, our next two speakers, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to be somewhat brief because many of you have already heard me talk about the Democrats being the main party today of the ruling class, and talk about the reasons that the Democrats in particular are on the war path. But I wanted to discuss why Black Agenda Report is treating this issue of war and peace so prominently as the critical issue to date. I mean, right now, all of you know that Black Agenda Report doesn't confine itself to the black part of town in terms of the kind of work that we do. We are internationalists, all of us, and that's because the whole world is the human community. But we do have a special mission. If we claim that we are an authentic voice of the black left, then we have to be very tenacious about examining the contradictions of the black American polity in particular. And the only way that we can do that and not be parochial or narrow in our approach is to place the black American situation, the black American struggle, into its global and historical context. We feel that is part of our special responsibility. And so we understand that our black misleadership class is not a peculiar black problem, but that they are in many ways simply agents of larger forces. And specifically, they are agents of the Democratic faction of the ruling class, which is now the main and most aggressive war party. Therefore, if we are going to participate in the fight against the U.S. ruling class and the fight against U.S. imperialism, and if we're going to be on the side of people all over the world who are fighting U.S. imperialism, we have to fight most intensely our own black misleadership class. We can't defend our own people if we don't fight this corrupt black misleadership class, which tries to serve itself and its very narrow interests by serving the interests of capital. Today, the Democrats are whipping up a war fever such that even old people like me have never experienced it in terms of the decibel level, the madness, the craziness of it. And the black misleadership class is whooping it up, is hooping and hollering as loud as any of the rest of them. They're all screaming about the Russians as if that's all black folks have to talk about. And so even though Barack Obama is gone, and everybody at Black Agenda Report is so glad. And one of the reasons that we are so glad he's gone is because we had 8 years of a very unique experience for black folks. Here we have black people shown in so many ways to be the most pro-peace constituency in the country. But that is not necessarily the case. We can't say definitively if that remains the case after 8 years of Barack Obama in the White House. After 8 years of folks feeling an intimacy, a closeness, an identification with not only the head of U.S. imperialism, But it will have to, history will I'm sure say, one of the most aggressive and militaristic presidents, heads of U.S. imperialism ever. So this is not good for anybody's psyche, but it certainly was a pollutant in terms of the black experience. So here we are, finally rid of Obama, and we get this anti-Russian fever, and we have people like Maxine Waters, who many of us had a soft spot for in the past, now screaming about Vladimir Putin and Trump as if they're incestuous kinds of cousins or something like that. Today, black people are screaming against Russians, thinking that somehow they are doing damage to Trump, and not understanding the damage that is being done to our movement, to our fortunes, to the struggle for a just world. And that is really a disaster. The historically most pro-peace constituency in the country is now in danger of being co-opted by the war party, and everybody ought to be especially upset about that. So we have to do real battle with this black misleadership class on the peace front. And we're going to have to give greater scrutiny also to black formations in the movement. And I mean especially to Black Lives Matter, a young formation that is so important to what we thought was the possibilities of there being a new period of intense political struggle in black America. But we all know that U.S. wars abroad are also wars against the poor here at home. Dr. King said that 50 years ago. And we all know that the mechanisms of repression that are used against black people in general and against dissidents in particular have become far more effective and far more pervasive under America's endless war on terror. But I think that there is something at stake here that is just as critical, and that is the harm that is done to the spirit of solidarity with oppressed people everywhere, and solidarity with the victims of U.S. imperialism by this immersion in war fever and the participation in this war fever by some of the most prominent black Americans. If we don't have solidarity with other oppressed people, then we can expect no solidarity from others in our own struggle. And I'm talking about black folks. Thank you.